So the other day I was doom scrolling on TikTok and I saw this one TikTok of this town called Frutillar. And I initially, to be honest, thought it was Japan with the view of what I thought was Mount Fuji for a split second. But then I looked around a little bit more and the architecture looks quite European in places. So I just really wanted to check this place out. It's called Frutillar. It's really cool. It's in awesome town in the south of Chile, just north of Puerto Montt. And it sits on the west side of Lago Yanquihue. I think I said that right. So it turns out that volcano that I thought was Fuji is actually called Osorno, and it is all in the province. Yes, Chile has a province system, so it's in the province of Yanquihue. So the name Frutillar literally means strawberry field, which is just so pleasant and makes sense as the area looks very damp and kind of reminds me of Western Washington and Oregon. The area gets roughly 1,500 to 2,000 millimeters, or in American, 60 to 80 inches of rain, and is mild year-round. The summers are pretty pleasant, typically highs around 68 to 72, and it's rarely ever truly hot, because the lake and ocean's influence keeps things moderate. Winters are also cool but not brutal. They have highs in the 40s and 50s and lows near freezing, but snow is uncommon in the town. Although it does snow a bunch on the mountains far away, so it's always a pretty view. Long before any Europeans were here, this was Huiche territory. I don't know if I said that right. Which was a southern branch of the Mapuche nation, living off fishing, hunting, and agriculture around the lake. Now, here's where things get a little strange. The Spanish first documented Lake Yanquihue in 1552 under Pedro de Valdivia, and Garcia Hurtado confirmed its position 6 years later. So, by the late 1500s, this lake was on the map. The Spanish knew it existed, and they'd written it down. But then they just kind of lost it. It's not like this lake is a pond, you know. It's Lake Yanquihue is the largest lake entirely inside Chile. It's actually over 300 square miles, which is roughly 50% larger than Lake Tahoe. So it's a pretty big lake, hard to misplace. But the Spanish colonial society just kind of straight up misplaced it for 240 years. So, how do you lose a lake that big? Well, two things happened. First, in 1604, the nearby city of Osorno, the Spanish foothold in the region, was abandoned during a Puche rebellion. So, when that city fell, the Spanish lost their access point to the whole area. Second, eruptions from the two volcanoes, Osorno and Calbuco, pushed the remaining people living along the shore away. So, with no city, no settlers, and no reason to go back, the dense southern rainforest of Chile just kind of engulfed and swallowed the whole region. The lake didn't really just move, the Huchi never lost it, they were still there. But for the Spanish and later the Chilean world, it vanished from maps, records, and everything for 240 years. So one of the biggest lakes in South America was essentially just a rumor. And it stayed lost until 1842 when this guy, Bernardo Unom Philippi, who despite his Spanish-sounding name, was actually a German-born sailor, military man, and explorer working with the Chilean army. He hacked his way through the forest and rediscovered it, and he immediately understood what he was looking at because he wrote home comparing its water clarity to actually Lake Geneva, which is, in Switzerland. He described a snow-covered volcano rising straight out of its eastern waters. Then he pitched the Chilean government a bold idea. The underdeveloped South would flourish if they recruited German families who were struggling through the upheaval of the Industrial Revolution and already looking to immigrate to the Americas. The colonization program was granted under President Manuel Bulnes, and one account says 6,000 families sailed across the world and were encouraged to settle this lake on the edge of Patagonia and build the democratic society that they couldn't have access to at home. Modern Frutillar is really two towns wearing one name. Frutillar Bajo is the postcard, which, you see all the pretty pictures and stuff from. It's got the lakefront strip with these cool German-looking houses, cafes, flower gardens, and a cool pier. It's much more touristy. There is one main road that connects Frutillar Bajo to Frutillar Alto, which topographically looks like New Zealand to me. So my GeoGuessr skills would be very confused here. But up the hill in Alto is the regular working town where most people actually live. So as you go up the hill, you can see as the architecture becomes much more what you'd expect in Chile, and definitely more rundown. One interesting thing that Frutillar has is the Teatro del Lago, which is absolutely gorgeous. I found it while I was just looking on the maps. It's kind of hard to ignore if you're looking at the waterfront, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's really cool, and I hope that someday I can come down here and explore it. So, 170 years later, the German experiment never really ended. It just kind of manifested in the town's embracing of Chilean and a German fusion of culture. And one main symbol of this fusion is Kuchen, which means cake in German. Also, I wanted to explore that Teatro del Lago more, which just because it looks really cool. And supposedly it has the best acoustics in all of South America. And so it turns out that the German settlers brought this obsession with choir over, and it never really left. And now Frutillar is apparently considered a UNESCO City of Music. And it explains when you're going through the town, like on Google Maps here, you see tons of these like music notes and symbols around. So it's pretty cool. And it happens to be the southernmost UNESCO city of music on the planet. So that's pretty cool. Then another thing that grabbed my attention on the road up to Alto, I accidentally took the wrong road and then saw this um, rodeo place thing on the map. And it's a venue for the Chilean rodeo, which apparently is the country's national sport, I learned. So that's pretty cool. As a Texan, I think that's really sick. The cuisine here includes a lot of typical Chilean stuff, but also, due to its roots, has a solid bit of German influence as well, in addition to the Kuchen. The Club Alemán de Frutillar, when exploring, was kind of hard to miss. They serve schnitzel, pork chops, and sauerkraut, which sounds awesome to me. And it has sides of potatoes cooked in cream, cheese, and bacon. So that sounds absolutely amazing. I am starving. I should not have filmed this while starving. But there's one food this town is literally named after, the strawberry. Frutillar translates to strawberry field, and this makes sense as the word frutilla is a wild Chilean strawberry, and they grew all along this shore. And so the wild part is that little white berry is the mother of every strawberry you've ever eaten. And so in the 1700s, the Chilean strawberry was brought to France and crossed with a North American species. And that hybrid became the modern garden strawberry, which is sold in every grocery store on earth. So the next time you eat a strawberry, a piece of its family tree traces right back to the shores of this lake, which is a pretty cool claim to fame for this town of 20,000-ish people. Speaking of population, let's talk demographics and such. So the 2024 census counted 22,554, and the city's actually growing, which is pretty cool. I feel like that's pretty uncommon for small towns in the vast majority of the world these days. I could be very wrong about that, but I feel like that's definitely how it is here in America. And so about 21% of the population is over 60. So it skews definitely a bit older, which fits the quiet lakeside town profile and especially the touristy vibes. Historically, though, the commune was notably more rural, with roughly a third of its residents living in the countryside. Economically, the area's countryside is dairy country, historically supplying creameries and cheese factories. Another important facet of the economy for the region is tourism, which is what is actually growing the town. The Teatro del Lago, the festival, Kuchen cakes, lakefront hotels is what's driving the population boom and the town's whole modern identity. And lastly, another big contributor to the local economy is salmon. Zooming out, the entire region is dominated by salmon farming. And apparently this has a connection to the football of the country too. So that's pretty cool. However, it is important for me to note that the growth of this tourism isn't completely positive though, because for 150 years this was a quiet dairy town. So, but then the world really like found out about it, and now the strawberry field is one of the fastest growing towns in southern Chile, and that comes with many challenges from everything including infrastructure to the crowding out of locals. So, it's definitely a double-edged sword there. The popularity of the salmon farming, funny enough, brings me to sports, because the biggest football club in this region, Deportes Puerto Montt, which is about 45 minutes down the lake, is literally nicknamed Los Salmoneros, which I believe it just means the salmon farmers. And that's not just like a nickname. So when the club hit hard times a couple years ago, it was actually rescued by a sponsorship deal with more than a dozen salmon farming companies coming together. So technically, the fish fund the football. And it actually worked. They just won their league in 2025 and got promoted back up to Chile's second division. So that's pretty cool. Good for them. However, that's the big club down the road, which the whole region really supports. But Frutillar has an interesting football story of its own. So it's too small and there's no professional team there. And honestly, that's kind of what makes it more interesting. Football here is pure grassroots. There's just 6 local clubs play in this Liga Copije, which is named after Chile's national flower, funny enough. And the town hall literally buys their kits. So every year, there's the Frutillar Cup, where 270 plus girls from 5 surrounding communes come play at the municipal stadium. So this is a very neighbors versus neighbors type of thing, and the kind where everyone in the stands knows each other. And it's cool that this is an even smaller scale football scene than the Bodo and Tromso teams that I talked about in the last video. Just so cool. So, in exploring this place, I went to YouTube to check things out, and there seemed to be extremely minimal videos of the place in English. And so I had to listen to a couple of them in YouTube's auto dub, which, to be honest, pisses me off because it just sounds weird and it pronounces frutillar as frutillar. So I just relied on my poor A2 Spanish and turned off the auto dub to understand what I could. Also, in driving around, I've seen a ton of these restaurants around which all look very good, and some have these beautiful views of the lakefront, and I just imagine myself sitting here eating some great German Chilean food, just vibing out with this beautiful view. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. So, driving around in the north, it's just crazy to me how similar this looks to like coastal Washington. Like if I got this on GeoGuessr, I'd be screwed if I couldn't see any language or any like street signs or anything. It's just this looks just like the parts of Washington that I've been through. It's really pretty. Down in the southern part of the town, there's a beautiful church here on the water. It's just so cool. Like look at this and the pier out here. Oh man, very cool. Lastly, the easiest way to get there from the US would mostly be to fly into Santiago, which big airports in the US actually have direct flights there. Like I didn't even know DFW, which Dallas Fort Worth, which has a couple direct flights to Santiago, is 9.5 hours, but obviously it's very expensive. So then after landing in Santiago, you'd fly from Santiago to Puerto Montt, just domestically, and that flight's under 2 hours. Then a 45-minute drive up from Puerto Montt to Frutillar. So it's a pretty big travel day, but it's only one real travel day to go on this insane adventure. Overall, Frutillar is just a super, super cool place, and I really want to visit. Um, yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for watching.